Hello and welcome to our second Delta story, showcasing the successes of the natural oral approach. And with us today is a very good friend of mine who I've met through the Delta Summer Schools, is Andy Stubbs. And before we go to him to talk about his story about the natural oral approach, his life, his childhood, his deafness, and so much more that he's itching to give information to us, is that I'm going to give you a bit of an update regarding what's happening with Delta. So now we're coming into the March, we will be putting on some events in due course, which is so exciting. Many online events that we'll be doing shortly. And watch this space in future to find out more about what's going to be happening within Delta very, very soon. So I'm so excited. I'm pretty sure you're excited, and I'm pretty sure Andy's excited too. Can we give a wave, Andy? There we go. And if you are online, please say hello in the comments below. If you've got any questions whatsoever to ask of Andy or myself, please do so in the comments, and we'll get back to you with those questions at the end of our story interview. Now, I managed to drag Andy into this story interview because he is technically a young deaf adult, and I am too. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Andy for joining us, and I'm going to give it over to you, Andy. Tell us your story, tell us a bit about you, and first of all, start have an introduction to yourself.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Most of you probably know me if you've been involved with Delta already, but for potentially the families out there who are watching this on live, my name's obviously Andy. I've been involved with Delta, I think it must be 25 years now, probably a bit more. Started when I was first 15. Been doing through various incarnations of a role within Delta. So, as I said, I'm technically one of the young helpers. Just ignore the receding hairline. I'm still young. I've been involved with the trustees for a number of years now. So I got asked to join the trustee board a number of years ago with Ed. Actually, we both joined at the same time, and then through that role on the trustees, I was happy to be involved in then becoming a vice chair and subsequently the chair of Delta, which was a great honour. And I fulfilled my term for a bit longer, and then happily Delta now being run by capable hand of Ed.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely big shoes to fill. Definitely. Filling those shoes as well, even though I've got size 13 feet. So yeah, we'll see. So tell me a bit more about your family as well. How did they get to be involved in Delta and the natural oral approach? Start from the beginning. So imagine.
Well, actually, for myself, I got involved obviously as a teenager, and it was something that my hearing impaired teacher, was the teacher of the deaf, the company is more known, at the age of 14, 15, started noticing a character trait myself. Well, I wasn't that very confident. I would attend a mainstream school, but she noticed a character that I was the only deaf person at that college. But she felt I could have come out of myself a bit more. And so she liaised with my parents and let them know of Delta. She was involved with it herself many years ago, and she said, I think it would be a fantastic opportunity for Andy to meet other young deaf adults and to actually get involved more like a work experience basis of working with young deaf children, and it would be really good for him. So my parents are obviously all for this. I think they saw it in themselves that, although are kind of confident, it must have been, they wanted me to basically engage with the deaf people. And so I never looked back really. Like even now when I speak to my parents, they say there was an actual difference before, when I was just a sloppy teenager, to coming back from my first summer school and then subsequently going every year, and they said it was a big change in how I was, how I dealt with other people, how I was able to speak to other people, engage with other people. They saw confidence out of nowhere. And that's all thanks, really, to everyone I've been involved with the Delta Summer School, from the teacher of the deaf, from the parents that have been there, from the parent helpers, from the families. Just having that engagement, it's just absolutely brilliant. And, you know, it's still continuing to now. You can tell I quite shut up.
So when was your first summer school? Can you remember that far back?
Oh, that's going back now. 15, so it was 1996, 97 time. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a long way back now. And it's, you know, but brilliant memories though.
Yeah.
You know, every summer school had its own unique story to tell, but from the volunteers and from the different families that we've helped over the years. And, you know, it's just something that I've always loved being involved in ever since the start, I have to say.
You're just right, because you know, Delta is not just for families of deaf children or professionals that's involved. It creates a community for the young deaf adults out there, and those who have been there from that process since Delta was formed as NAG 40 years ago and then changed to Delta. All these children who've been involved in that process and those who came in and interested about that process have actually formed together into a really, really nice community. You know, I've met you through the summer school, and I think it was 2004, 2005, and we kind of like hit it off really, really well, and we became like really good friends, and to a point that we were bridesmaids, weren't we, for a
Yes.
person who came to the summer school to help out as well, and that's just been brilliant. So, and how did you find that, like meeting other deaf people there and sharing that story? Did you feel like you entered into some sort of community that really helped you?
Yes, definitely. I have to admit, on the first day that I came, I was actually very nervous because I didn't know any other deaf person. We could have gone to a mainstream school. I had so many friends at the mainstream school, but I was the only deaf student in that school at the time. There was one before me, but because they progressed in the year, they'd left to high college. And so I actually remember thinking, what's it going to be like? Will they accept me? I know it's a daft thought process, but could I have been in that situation before? I was like, will they accept me? How's it going to be? Well, everyone there been involved themselves for a number of years already, some of the older lot. And, you know, it's as it was then, as it is now, in that, you know, no matter how old you are, what background you come from, what part of the country you come from, as you say, it's a community. And so anyone who comes in, everyone comes round together to welcome them in. And that's what I got instantly. That's what you know, when I left that summer school, I was just like, wow, you know, this was absolutely brilliant. For the first time, I actually felt part of a proper community. And as you know yourself, when the volunteers, we have a lot of deaf people with the volunteers, but we also have the siblings or friends of the deaf people who are not deaf, but because they've been around them, they are so deaf aware that, you know, compare that to my school background where they're around me, but they're not fully deaf aware. All of a sudden, people very much aware, Andy, you know, make sure my lips, I could see their lips to lip read, and, you know, it was just brilliant. And, you know, it's a family now. It's actually a family.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so important, because even throughout the natural aural approach or the summer school or the events or the information we provide, we actually do involve the siblings and the really close friends to be involved in that process as well. And it's so good to see. I know, because I'm an only child, and I know you've got a sister, but it was so nice to see, you know, when I first came to summer school, and okay, yes, I met great other deaf adults over there, but also just to see, hearing people who are siblings of those deaf adults and friends. And it was just so nice to have that open conversation without slightly being worried about, about it being deaf aware, because it isn't, because they're already deaf aware. They can go through it immensely. So I think that's absolutely fabulous, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think another key part of that too, of the welcoming and the positiveness of it, is that the siblings and the adults don't treat you any different. That's the key part of Delta Summer School and the oral approach and everything that we do. We don't distinguish between you're deaf, you're not. Therefore, there's two separate entities within it. It's everyone together. And that's how the non-deaf people treat us. They treat us as a person, as an individual. And that's what I loved. For Upminster College, it's always he's the deaf student, he's the deaf person. At Delta Summer School, we're deaf, but it's not pointing out they're deaf kind of thing. And it's just such a difference. And it's just like you actually feel, I know it sounds harsh word, but you do feel normal.
Yeah, definitely. Fantastic. And for those who are watching and wondering just what exactly is a summer school, in your own words, Andy, what do you think is a summer school for families of deaf children?
Oh, more than one word, and it's difficult to condense. Basically, obviously, as a charity, we are advocating the oral approach, and the summer school is a brilliant opportunity that we've had over the years, in which we've been at various universities, accommodation across the country, and it's a chance to get families to come in with their deaf children. And for myself, as a young volunteer, it was a great opportunity. And I'm sure many of the volunteers, past and present, will agree. It's taking those young deaf children out on trips and giving those children the best time of their life. Again, for those young children, they get to meet other young deaf children. They're getting to see us as the older deaf adults, the deaf volunteers. You look at them and they're looking at us chatting along. And to me, that's been one of the best parts of summer school. It's just that bringing together families from across the country who thought they were probably the only ones out there, and all of a sudden we're given that enablance to see that they're not on their own. And here's all these older deaf children, deaf adults, and it gives them hope. And for many of the families to see us engaging with their children too, and it's always about that engagement, that oral approach. And and for the families, for the parents, it's a chance for them to work with our hearing impaired teacher volunteers and get that help and support and advice to take back home with them. But for me, it's always been about the fun. Summer school has always been about the fun.
Yeah, and everyone really, really enjoys it. And we absolutely love hearing the feedback from everyone that's involved in summer schools, and even information days as well, which we put on regional events across the UK. And but we always found that the best part for parents was actually speaking to young deaf adults at the end of the summer school to find out their stories. Hence why we're having this conversation here today, to reach out to those families across the UK from the comfort of their own home to listen to your story and Ellen's story, which we did about 2 weeks ago. And we hope to have more stories coming along on Facebook Live pretty much soon. So watch out for those events soon. So let's dive a little bit deeper into your life, Andy. And so tell me about your experience of deafness, your family's experience of your deafness. What happened when you were born deaf, or did it come on all of a sudden?
No, I was actually born deaf. So I was born deaf in the 80s. So I'm giving my age away a bit there now. But, the diagnosis of deafness had changed a lot now. So for me, I actually didn't get diagnosed properly as being deaf until I was about 3 to 4 years old. So parents knew, parents always know. And so they kept, going to the doctor going, something wrong with him, there's something wrong with him, and the doctor, I think they were going back, saying it's a slow developer, very bad now, but that, the doctors just didn't have that guidance back then. So it was just, if he's not talking well, it's just a slow developer. It would only after a lot of pushing that I was actually diagnosed with being deaf. And at 4 years old, my parents were determined to try and do the absolute best for me. My parents do, so they wanted to see if there was any possibility of the deafness getting worse, getting better, what were the options out there. So I would actually take him to see the foremost expert. I think he still is actually the expert at Great Ormond Street. I think he's still working even now. So I've actually still got memories of heading down to London, which was a great adventure. As you can imagine, at 4 or 5 years old, going to Great Ormond Street Hospital and having the MRI scan, and it's a great big machine. And speed the story up a bit, obviously they were told that I was deaf. Unfortunately, with me, it was the nerve endings, so there was no possibility really of anything being able to be done with that, so it would be down the hearing aid route. As with the 80s, I was given the chunky boxes that you don't see anymore. I actually don't have any memory of this, but all my photos from 4 nursery onwards, I'm all in very cool dungarees with the pockets at the front. I actually didn't realise that there was a purpose for this. It would actually put the hearing aid in. I always thought it was just an 80s fashion, but no, it was to help with the hearing aid too. But technology is obviously speeding up all the time. So we went on to the old analog hearing aids, and I'm currently on the digital one now, the digital powerful one, although I have been told with the natural progression of getting a bit older that my levels of deafness are such that I am due to have an appointment post-COVID at some point with the Nottingham Hearing Aid Department and have a cochlear implant assessment. So that will be the next stage, because obviously hearing aid can only work to a certain level. But, where that might have terrified me any other time, could I know so many deaf people within Delta, and I'm seeing so many deaf children in Delta, and how cochlear implants work and being able to speak to everyone who's got them, that fear, I'm actually quite excited if I get one. I want the one where you can go swimming in them.
I definitely agree with you, because I've got a cochlear implant now, and I've had one since about my 10th year now. But I was really, really unsure about cochlear implants until I met everybody at Delta summer schools, knowing how much they thrived and how much they could actually hear. Because I remember talking to a mutual friend of ours at Delta Summer School, but all 3 of us were talking, and all of a sudden he picked up a sound that even both of us could not even hear. I've got a very clear memory of this, and I think it was a telephone ringing in the distance, and both of us couldn't hear. And I think that moment sold it for me that I could go for a cochlear implant. So again, it's always having that community together is actually very important. But with cochlear implants, but back in our day, in the 80s, I mean, as you say, with the phonic boxes, with the long wire going into our hearing aids and everything, with the old analog hearing aid, which just, amplified sound, which we had clever by that point. But I do remember when we were going for those hearing tests to determine your diagnosis. And what we love talking about this, don't we? Called the bleep test.
Yeah.
And so basically, you have your headphones over your ears, and then you get sent a series of emitted low pitch, high pitch sounds. And as soon as you hear a sound, then you can either press the buzzer. But I think because we were showing them on them days, we had to move a block from one side to another. But then
I also have a xylophone too. Ping the xylophone.
So sometimes you just don't quite catch it, don't you? Or you think you've heard that sound, but you move it. But I think it's so interesting because, again, you were diagnosed when you were, 2 to 3 or 4. But I was diagnosed when I was about 5. It's only because it was so easy to slip through then, wasn't it? Because
Yeah.
I've got blocks in front of me. I am going to move those blocks, whether I hear anything or not. So that's why I kept passing the test. But luckily, now we've got the newborn screening program. So that really, really helps a lot. But back then in our day, we didn't. Tell me a bit more about the support you got from school as well. Did you have a teacher of the deaf through a
I
primary
did,
school?
yes. So I think I had one from junior age. That's my memory. I'm sure I most likely had some kind of support at primary infant level, but can't remember that. I've gone too far back my memory now. But yeah, it's very similar to what children get these days. It was a teacher of the deaf used to come in and visit the school, I think once or twice a week for me at primary school, and then secondary school once a week. Try to, like the process, trying to give me a bit more independence rather than keep putting me out of the classroom. But it was useful. It really was. There were some topics in the school where I was struggling to hear in the class, and the teachers are very constrained in their time. They've got a class of 30, so they can't just stop. Or they feel they can't stop the whole class just to try and go through the whole process myself. So having that and the teacher of the deaf support, which enabled me to go to them. So they take me out of the class and they go, well, are there any particular subject or classes that you're having problems with? And if I had a piece of homework I didn't hear properly in the classroom, she'd already been in to speak to the teacher so that we were able to go through it on an individual basis, one-to-one, even with the microphone box. We wore that, even though we might have been close, just to make sure that I was hearing everything. And they provided a kind of almost like a social service kind of role too. Again, it's harking back to my age, but even now, not every school teacher probably fully aware or fully deaf aware, should I say. And so, their remit was to, I'd known about some teachers, saying they're not looking the right way, or there's some children in the class were being really, really noisy and the teachers ignoring that. My teacher of the deaf would right, I'll sort this. And so, we'd have our little meeting over, and then her next role would be to go to the teacher to put more than target an individual, make them feel picked on. She'd do it in a more round way to get all the teachers to have me as their teacher in the different subjects, and just go through just to reiterate the importance. If you've got a deaf student in the class, you need, that they need to make sure that they're using the equipment properly. They should give them training on how to use that equipment, give them a go. I know there are different technologies where the teacher can have a go at using and just see how it works. And more importantly, though, telling them to, if they've got Andrew more than Andy, obviously, back then, but if you've got Andrew in your class, put him at the front so that, don't put him at the back. Otherwise, with that distance of the classroom, he's not going to hear. And all these apply now, so, it's about having that support and make sure that the teacher was aware that I needed that extra level of support. Because I was deaf, it's just a hearing thing. It doesn't affect my mental capacity. I was still there to learn and engage with everyone else, but it just had a slight handicap with the hearing, and it's just making sure that the teacher were aware of that.
I mean, I completely agree, because through my primary school and secondary school, you get some teachers who need that deaf awareness training, and that is something that we're putting together here at Delta to try and provide that resource for teachers, so to understand about what quick tips that they can do to ensure that the deaf child in their classroom is able to communicate effectively with their teacher. But I do remember one occasion back in primary school that I had a year 5 teacher and he had the thickest beard ever. And I remember the first week I was in his class, and I remember telling my teacher of the deaf, saying, I have no idea what he's saying, because I couldn't lip read back then. And so the teacher of the deaf had a word with him, and the next day he came into school, beard fully shaven off.
Brilliant.
Completely different. So, and it was yeah. So yeah, brilliant. So, and what about at home though? What any support that you received for your deafness at home?
So I live alone, which again hopefully is a positive thing for people who are watching. You know, it shows that we can live our own lives. At the moment, I've got a special smoke detector for fire alarm that's plugged into a very, very vibrating device. It had actually woke me up. I don't know what I'd done. I think I'd left the hob on or something daft, and it set the smoke detector off downstairs. And I think it must have been 2 o'clock in the morning. I've been cooking late, 2 o'clock in the morning, the whole bed shaking like an earthquake. And, you know, waking up thinking of fire. just the smoke from the cooker coming out. It's like, But, you know, you do get a lot of resources like that. That was kindly installed for me free by the local fire brigade. And that is, you know, something that even if you have a child with you, that's something I would highly advocate, actually, in reaching out to the fire service or your local council, who might be the other side of things, just to see about getting them, because it's not only safe for yourself, but it's nice to know that, you know, if the fire alarm, smoke alarm does go off, your child, teenager, have also got that benefit rather than just relying on the parent to wake them up. You know, they've got that added security for them too. There's lots of other resources out there. I don't have one myself. I have actually been looking for one, but there is the flashing doorbell alarm. I know Action Hearing Loss and Conevin, two different suppliers of deaf equipment. You can get some of them around there, and the phone, the louder phones. And I've got a wish list actually for me, which is the special speaker, which you can Bluetooth the hearing aid. It's very expensive. So that's on my wish list to get. But you know, there are a lot of resources out there. You know, as people and organisations become more deaf aware, there's a lot more out there that's being offered for the deaf adult, running the deaf children. So, you know, always keep an eye out on Delta page. We always try and make people aware of such equipment. So do be aware of what you can look out for, and do ask, you know, by any means, ask any of us at the Delta community, have you got anything, what do you use for this, what do you use for that? And I'm sure we can get back and advise accordingly.
Definitely. I mean, particularly in some hotels now, they have what they call the Deaf Guard alerter. So, you know, you can actually put under your pillow. So if there's an alarm going off in the hotel somewhere, it actually shakes you awake. And so be able to be alerted to anything that's happening in the hotel. And they can keep an ask if there's any other, you know, support that they could have. I mean, I think the most extreme version I've had was when I said, could I have a wake-up call? Because I had to get a 7 o'clock flight in the morning, so I had to be at the airport for 5 o'clock. And they said, we'll sort it out, no problem. And I thought they were going to give me an alarm, something. But in fact, they came into the room and shook me awake. And I was like, well, who are you?
I've done something similar. I don't know where I was. I think it was a work trip or something, and I just asked them just to be aware. And the alarm hadn't gone off, but I think maybe it was me, maybe my communication, maybe I've completely forgot. But then they thought I asked to be woken up, similar to you. I had woken up, no problem that morning, but I'd gone to the shower. At most of doing hotel room, you don't wear your clothes. But all I know is I'm coming out the bathroom, you know, in the bath, and all of a sudden, just the door opening, I let out, it wasn't a manly scream, I'm afraid. It wasn't a manly scream. It was just like, I'm naked. I'm trying to run to the bed. And it's just the embarrassed face going, did you want to be woken up? I'm awake. I'm awake.
And that's just so funny because, it's so funny to, laugh about it and understand about your hearing loss as well. So it's not always, doom and gloom.
No,
About it, because there are many occasions that we can always laugh about it, and then gives us plenty of stories to talk about.
Yes.
And then there's lots of things that make us positive, in the way of looking at our hearing loss. So that's just absolutely brilliant. So in terms of your deaf awareness, what you would ask for other people, what sort of deaf awareness tips would you ask of other people? What's your go-to deaf awareness tips for people to communicate effectively with you?
The main one, I'd say the main one for me is to face me. The problem being is, the hearing aids and cochlear implants are only working to a certain extent. They do not replace all our lost hearing. A lot of people tend to think, because we've got hearing aid or cochlear implants, that our hearing is perfect. And as a result of that, they tend to forget we're deaf, and in conversation they'll turn away, as to do with everyone. But for me, instantly, that's like, no, because as so many of us, we also rely on lip reading. And the moment that person's face is turned away, that's it. The sound coming in, some words may be audible to us to understand what they are, but at the same time, so many other words aren't. And for us and deaf people, it's trying to process what word being said. And though we obviously rely so much on lip reading, that when we're listening to the sound, we're reading the lips, and our brain is processing all this information all at once, try and make a coherent sentence in our head, what's being said. So if that's gone, what's being said completely the opposite. It's just very difficult. So for me, it's always, please, when you're speaking to a deaf person, face them. Don't get in their face. We don't need that. Don't over exaggerate the lips. I've had so many times where people have actually said yes, and that's actually quite frustrating, and it's embarrassing too at times when they're going, how are you? You want? And I totally understand they're doing it from what they feel is a helpful process, but I'd advise that don't just try and speak normally. Avoid putting your hands in front of your lips. I know a lot of people, even I'm sometimes bad actually, I'm nervous habits with my hand moving around. But if face the person, speak clearly. Don't speak louder than necessary when you're doing that process. And again, it comes down to
clarity of the doesn't it? So yeah.
So a lot of people think automatically you're deaf. So does it help if I speak louder? No, it doesn't, because it distorts in our hearing aids and cochlear implant devices, and so we do miss the sound then. And so that to me would be the key tip. And it's the same whether you're engaging with a young child or an adult. It's just about being patient too. That's another thing. That's the key important thing. A lot of the time I'm guilty of it, I have to admit, where I haven't heard properly what's been said, and so many of us, and though it's just the famous shake head, and so many times where I've actually, even worse, gone yes, and the person in the end is just going, that wasn't funny what I just said. You could see it in the head. So if you're not deaf and you're engaging with a deaf person, be patient and don't be afraid to ask that deaf person, did you hear what I said?
Right. Yeah.
I've got one of my best mates, brilliant at that. She picks out every time when I've not heard anything, and she'll sit there on the sofa pre-pandemic time, and she'll be like, you didn't hear what I said, did you? And I'd be like, no. It's like, just tell me and I will repeat. And so, again, from a deaf person, don't be afraid to ask the person to repeat themselves.
Yeah.
Little all add up.
Well, because you do one of the things that's actually quite hard for potentially a deaf person to hear, which is running. And you do fell running, don't you, across the Staffordshire? And obviously you're running along and you do a lot of sweating, obviously, as you do when you do lots of exercise. And you also do, you're running into down the lane, so you might not be able to hear what's going on around you. And I know you've had a really bad incident once where somebody pushed you out of the way in the race. But how do you manage that when you're doing your running? Because I'm sure many families are thinking, how does my deaf child need to get into sport, particularly in running, and how the best way to manage that? What would you
I mean, to me, in general, that was, the incident you speak of, I'll come on to that. But in general, the running community, I find, is one of the most embracing communities. Again, it's still to the summer school, that everyone looks out for each other. And for me personally, a lot of the runners in my local running area, Derbyshire and Peak District Way, know I'm deaf now. So they are very much that whole patient, make sure they try and base me when they talk. And it's about your individual approach to the running process. So yes, I run on my own. On the roads, I try to avoid, I have to admit, mainly because where I am, the lane, so there's no pavement to go into the lane and there's no street light. I love the countryside for that, but from a running perspective, it can get quite dangerous. So I try to restrict my running to daytime if possible, and at the weekend, like I just done today, an off-road run. And there are cases where, like you say, you get a lot very sweaty. So for me, I do have to, when I'm on my own, take my hearing aids out and keep them in either a bank bag, those are bank coin bags. One of my friends gave me loads of those. They're really good for keeping it waterproof. Well, if I'm running with friends, it's a different approach entirely again. So I keep my hearing aids in. There are occasions when sweat does get the better of them. And so it's quite funny because I'll be running along with them, having a chat, and all of a sudden, I think they're used to it now, all of a sudden, like, I'm going to silent mode, just get the hearing aids out. I can hear them starting to go a bit funny with the sound. But again, because they're aware of it, they are keeping their eye out for me. And it's handy having that friendship group to do that. For myself as a runner, when I'm running on my own, it's just a case of being extra vigilant to your surroundings. But that doesn't stop me from being able to do it. I've done lots of different running over the years. I've done London Marathon on behalf of Delta. And then with a fellow friend of ours, Ed Stewart, and we decided to do probably the most bonkers thing ever between us, considering we've never done anything like that before, to do a 103-mile marathon. And sure, Ed won't mind me saying this, but obviously Ed Stewart's deaf too. So here it was a 103-mile ultramarathon because of the weather condition that most of the time both of us didn't have our hearing aids in, so we were just running in silence the whole way. But it was brilliant because we devise our own, it's on a coastal path, so we devise our own little signals to the person running in front. Left hand out meant the left trip hazard, right same, both hand out, watch how it might fall. But it's the same with any sport. I highly love running, and it's something I want to be involved in as long as I can, while I still can. But there's lots of sports out there. Another mutual friend of ours did rugby, and another one actually played rugby for England, for the England deaf team, and it's just fantastic. Yes, we are deaf, but there's doesn't stop us we can do any sport, pretty much any sport anyone else can.
Yeah, it doesn't limit us at all, does it? Deafness to do the things that we.
Your case, an example, you're doing your personal training. If you don't mind me saying, telling them about, you've got your personal training going. You're going to the gym.
Exactly, and I've been involved in a bit of rugby as well, and I've been doing some swimming, and so it doesn't stop you from doing the things that you want to do, and that I think that's the most important thing that we can get out there. Deafness is not something that limits you to whatever that you want to do. You can do it, and that's the perfect way that we can come across, particularly all the different people that we have in Delta, like us, and those who are a lot younger. And those who are even older than us, they're in such high-flying positions in their jobs, so they're just absolutely brilliant. And also you're known as well in our members and volunteers group that you're the Batman. Could you explain a bit more about that? Batman. You are the Batman, yeah. Could you explain a bit more about that?
I don't know how that came about. I think it mainly because of my love for the film Batman, and then it was also because of that love of Batman. There was a company a few years ago. I use different ones now, but there was a company a few years ago in which I got special hearing aid covers, and it was the Batman logo, and I just thought it was a brilliant thing to have because I think the first time I had them on, I went actually at summer school, just prior to summer school, I'd gone to my local Starbucks and just sat in the queue, and this one you could all queue quite close together, and all of a sudden I just felt this tiny hand coming, pushing my head. I think, to thought I'd imagine it. All of a sudden, this tiny little hand tried to grab the hearing aid out my ear, and I turned around in shock, thinking it was an adult trying to get the hearing aid out. Turned around, a little toddler, about 2 or 3 years old, and she's like, "I'm so sorry, he loves Batman," and it could have got the Batman logo on the hearing aid. But it was brilliant because she was like, "Do you mind me asking, what are they? Are they hearing aids?" And in that shop in front of everyone, I would explain what hearing aids were and how it was doing for me. And she was only a toddler, but she'd got 4 years, but that the hearing aids make him hear. And the boy just like, wow. And I just thought, I have to admit, I ran away with a buzz after that, because it was my chance to show that the hearing aids don't have to be boring. They can be exciting, but then to come to summer school, and then obviously all the kids were seeing with the Batman, and
I hope you know that I'm going to be Superman myself. Yeah. We can have a Justice League going on.
I don't think you can see them at the moment. I don't know how good my camera is, but I've got the NHS Superman logo at the moment, so that's obviously in support of everyone working in the NHS at the moment. But
where do you buy them from?
Ask me again, and we'll put it on the Facebook in the comments. I'll put the shop link on the comment, because it's brilliant, because they send you out a whole big plaster board, if you like, just so that it covers every kind of device out there. So whether you've got a cochlear implant, a child hearing aid, or an adult hearing aid, or a different kind of hearing aids, then it's all there for everyone. So I've not yet decided. I don't think this company does the Batman logo, so I need to have a look around, see if there's any Batman logo there.
Oh, fantastic! And tell us a bit more about what you're doing now. What you're doing in your role, and where are you, and what you up to?
Yes, so currently I'm in an environment advisory body. It's quite a big body, actually. So for those who aren't aware, it's an organisation called Natural England. We are like the sister body to the Environment Agency, and I don't know how you classify it. Basically, I look at the planning application, and I deal with high-risk planning application across the country, and it's my role to assess those planning applications. And I've been doing that role now for 10 years now. So I've been with the organisation 12 years. It's a role that does involve a lot of phone calls. I had to, after my organisation, as everyone now got one, but got a iPhone. We work on an iPhone, and we've recently upgraded all of our systems in a much quicker way, thanks to the pandemic. So that a lot of the meetings now, individually or at a big team meeting, is similar to this Zoom or Microsoft Teams that we use. And it's brilliant because, as good as phones are, I do not always hear what's being said on the phone, especially if I'm calling outside an organisation where I'm dealing with someone I don't know very well. This enabled me to actually, similar to this, to engage with my colleagues on a face-to-face basis. And it's brilliant. So, it's just little things like that help. But yeah, I've been involved in that now for 12 years. Before that, I was a Riverside Ranger. You can probably remember the days I was in that. And then before that, I was a parts officer. And every job that I've been in has had its different requirements. But every job I've been in, everyone, really gone out of the way to try and help me the best they can with the technology available at the time to let me do the job as anyone else. And that's what I think one of the best things, again, come down to Delta, is giving me that that hope and belief that I'm not constrained by my deafness. I think one of the worst things that would, for me as a teenager, when we all go through our career advice, and I can still remember, and I know it's what he thought was good, good advice back then. It wasn't really deaf aware, but now, if we could do that, it'd be so cringeworthy. And even now, I cringe and get angry too. But he said, "Oh, because you're deaf, have you thought?" Maybe I don't laugh, but he's like, "Have you thought about being a librarian? Because it's a quiet place, and you don't have to talk much, and you won't have to listen much." And I remember just looking at it, I was actually gobsmacked. That was the first, probably only time that I've actually almost lost my temper in a school situation with a teacher or now an adult. And I was just, even back then thinking, a lot of people know as a kid, I wanted to be a fireman. Obviously, that is one of the jobs at the moment we can't do because of the MASH requirement. But equally, I was hoping to get some better career advice. Okay, I've got a deafness, but this is what I like doing. This is what I think I can do. And to be told, like, you need to shut yourself away into a quiet library, and that's the role best suited to you. I actually walked out. I couldn't say anything to him. I just like, no. And I just walked out, and he was in shock. He wasn't expecting that. And I think it wasn't that long afterwards that I came to Delta Summer School, and with the older deaf volunteers at the time, you listen to them, and even then, some of them had exciting jobs. I was thinking, yeah, that's what I want to do, or, I can do. It's going to take a bit more work. I'm not going to, we can't deny it's going to take that bit more work. Equally, though, we can do it. We've got people, as you just said earlier, we've got people on such high profile jobs, high management level. And I hope, between me and you and the current volunteers, that for anyone coming into Delta now, if they're coming in with their young child, don't despair, don't give up hope. Your child, they'll do what they want, essentially. That's what with parent support, school support, the right support, the technology support, that child limitation, no.
Fabulous. Well, I think that's a really good place to kind of leave it there, really, because you just kind of said it all. What you just said, there is right support out there, and there will be support out there, And whereas, whether through Delta or any other people or any other organisation, there'll always be support wherever you need it. So, and that was just absolutely fantastic to end on that. But as we said, may have some questions for you through this Facebook Live. So, and you have one mention from Meg Robinson to say that the Robinsons are watching you. So I might want to say hello to them.
I love the Robinson family.
And then we've got Ellen, who is part of this in this call 2 weeks ago. She said the stickers were from Heroes.
That's the one, yes, Heroes.
That's the one, yeah. And then we also have Ange Owl, and she had a very good question, actually. She said, what do you hope for the future for young deaf children?
The hope for me is that they won't essentially be seen as deaf children. I'd like it so that society as a whole and schools as a whole will treat the child, recognising I was just talking the support, but actually recognising the child as a child and not trying to stop their limitation. I want that child, but for me, the child and the school will be told by the teacher, you can do this, you can do that. I don't want the teacher to be limiting them. I don't want society to be limiting them. I want society to recognise deaf children and deaf adults across the world have got just as much right as anyone to go through the same education process, going through the same job interview process, and to be no discrimination. That's even now in the 21st century, we are unfortunately and sadly still facing discrimination in many places. For me, the future world has gone. Places like cinema automatically will have subtitles. They will have regular film with screening subtitles, so that anyone can go. Children can go more often. How many cinemas currently, even now, you go to a cinema probably once a month with subtitles? So I'd like that. I'd like that to be changed. I think for me, I think the government really does need help. I know it sounds bad, but I think they do need someone providing support and advice on what deaf people need. I still think we're being missed, but no, that's not all negative. No, there is change. Change has happened, and the Disability Discrimination Act played a huge part in that. And that ensured that we do get a fair process at interviews. But I'd like it just to be more widely recognised that deaf people are part of the wider society. They're not just an isolated community. They are part of our society as a whole.
Exactly, and they are part of our individual family, friends, units as well. So whatever culture and whatever language that you have, you are part of that community. So that's what the Natural Aural Approach really works, is actually work with those families to make sure that that deaf child is really included within that family environment, whatever language or culture. So I think that's what really, really is key for all this. So I hope that answers your question, Ange. And I don't think we have any further questions, but is there any other notes you'd like to say before we finish?
Obviously, one thing, I'm obviously a trustee of Delta, so it's just a wider shout out to everyone who's watching this. If they're involved in Delta or they're just getting involved in Delta, we are always looking for support. So if you feel like you'd like to get involved in this, please do give it a shout out. We will not say no. And as a runner, I think it's very important to say, I think we've still got a few marathons, 2 more spaces left in the London Marathon this year in October. So if you do fancy giving that a go, please do get involved in that. And again, I'm happy to talk about the whole process if you want to from a running perspective. Otherwise, help out much as you can. Thank you.
Fantastic, Andy. If you'd like to know any more stories about people from Delta, as part of our 40th birthday celebration, we actually did turn 40 last year, but because of you know what, we have delayed this to this year. 40th birthday celebration. Many events will become available next month, but as part of our 40th birthday celebration, we are now collating stories from all of our young deaf adults now who's a young deaf adult now, but actually a young deaf child about 10 years ago, to give us their now and then stories. You can actually find them all on our website. And if you look under the tab Delta Stories, you'll be finding many stories from young deaf adults, but also from parents. Now, these will be uploaded across the next few months, so we will definitely let you know, particularly through Shattering newsletter. If you're not part of our email newsletter list, please do let us know. We will add you on there straight away. And if you have any questions, if you need any support, whether you're a family member or a professional or a young deaf adult, many more, please do email us at inquiries@deafeducation.org.uk or simply check out our website. I'll say thank you for watching us today. Thanks for putting us with two old fuddy-duddies who pretend to be young deaf adults, talk about their stories. But thank you so much, and we look forward to telling you who is going to be up next for our Delta story for Facebook Live, hopefully in about 2 weeks. So see you then. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy everything. Well then, bye.
Bye, everyone.